I always feel like a televangelist when I put one of these things on.
Amen.
This is great. This is the first time they put me as the last deal of the fair. I don't know if that means they're getting ready to push me out the door, or if well, I don't know what it means. But anyway, I'm glad y'all stayed around. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm excited. Down. Okay, is that better? Is that better? Okay. That's hitting my. How about that? Is that okay? I'm excited about this because I do a lot of speaking, as some of you know, and once in a while I get asked or get a chance to create a brand new thing. And today is that opportunity. This is a brand new talk, okay? For some of you that have heard me before, there'll be, obviously, it's a repackage of some other things, but this is a brand new thing, so I'm real excited about sharing with you. And when they asked me, what do you want to talk about at our fairs this year, I came up with this title, Don't Be Scared, Be Strange. Because I'm convinced that many of us are scared of being successful. In fact, business books say most people are far more afraid of being successful than failing. I mean, failing's easy. Anybody can fail. You don't have to try to fail, right? But what if you're successful and you have to start hiring people and you have to, finance expansion and capitalize things and what if you have to quit your job? And then you don't have paid insurance anymore and and paid vacations. And so what I want to do, the way I crafted this was to kind of ask the question, what's holding you back from pursuing a full-time agrarian dream? I'm convinced that a lot of people would love to be a full-time farmer if they really thought they could make a white-collar salary out of it. Is that right? And so, I want to examine 7 fears and give a solution to each one. All right? So, here we go. I've got my watch out here so I can watch what I'm doing and not get, because I might get carried away here. The first fear is the fear of not having enough knowledge. How do I do this? Okay, how do I do this? What do I do first? I don't know where to start. You go in there to the fair and there's greenhouses, there's aquaponics, and there's compost tea, and the world's finest cutlery, and cheese making, and goat milking, and heritage breeds, and spinning, and making rope out of twine. And where do you start? It's just. And what do I do first? Because those of us who are Mother Earth readers, we tend to have a lot of interest, don't we? People always come to the farm and say, well, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And I say, look, I'm only 56. Right? Haven't gotten there yet. Wait till I'm 80, The fact is we can't do it all at once, can we? And we can't start everything at once. All right. So those are the fears. So let's talk about how to solve them. First of all, let me see if I can hold this page down here. Okay, first of all, start with what you like. That seems simple. But look, if you sat down and made a list and prioritized what you like, that'll give you an idea of what a starting point. People ask me, what should I grow? I say, grow something you like to eat, because you might have to eat your way through your inventory. But do what interests you. Ah, great. Yeah, I can't bring that on the airplane. Okay, good. So do what interests you. All right? And don't be afraid to prioritize things. You can't do it all at once. So make a list. It's okay to make a laundry list of interests with your significant other and your family, and say, what are things that we really want to do first? And just shoot. If you got your whole family involved, just go around the room and have everybody put tick marks, okay? And the things that have the most tick marks, that's where we'll start, all right? I mean, if you're too timid to make that decision yourself. Expose yourself to lots of options to find what resonates. And obviously, coming to a fair like this, what exhibit do you go by and your heart just... What just resonates with your soul? Where do the spirits commune? Okay? And that's a good starting point, because the fact is, it is hard to start. And we don't need to be doing something that we're reluctant about to start. There's enough problems otherwise. Number 2, do the opposite of anything that the industrial farming community suggests you should do. Alan Nation, editor of Stockman Grass Farmer, says essentially, if you have an idea, write it down, take it to your conventional farming neighbors, and run it up their flagpole. If they think it's a good idea, don't do it. Now, if they say this is the most crackpot idea I ever heard, that's probably innovative enough and different enough to make a living on. The conventional advice is always wrong. I remember extremely well, as a little child, 5 years old, when we were starting this farm, and Dad had the best expert agriculture consultants in the country come by, both private and public. And to the person, their advice, his question was, how do I make a living on this little farm? And to the person, their advice was, graze the woods, plant corn, build silos. And he didn't do any of them. And of course, we were branded as, diddly-dobby hobby farmers and, not really credible and whatever. Number 3, start small. Think in terms of embryos. Don't invest your whole thing in the ship. I mean, if your idea fails, you don't want to be in bankruptcy. Don't sink the ship. Innovate with little prototypes. Test things before going whole hog. If you're interested in cheese, make some cheese. All right? Try it on some neighbors. Try it on some friends. Okay? Don't worry about licensing it first. Don't worry about whether it's legal or not. Just make some and dibble-dabble in it. Okay? And play with it, because it's in play. It's in playing with little things, isn't it, that we find our special areas of interest. So start small. Test things. Number 4. This is the hardest one. Start! Something! Anything! If you're in a condominium, you had a flower pot on a patio, you can start a pot garden. I mean, a pot, in pots. It's okay with me to do a pot garden too. It's fine. You have a rooftop, put a beehive up there. You have a southern exposure, hang some cattle panel, put plastic on it, and have a solarium against the house. All right? There are lots of things that you can do. Fill your space. Movement creates movement. So many people are paralyzed of doing anything because we have this notion that we've got to have the whole roadmap out there ahead of us before we start the car. And I'm suggesting that the way to move forward, don't even make a 5-year plan. Start with a step. And that step will eliminate the next step. Because movement creates movement. The hardest thing to overcome is inertia, and the hardest thing to stop is inertia once it's started. Okay? So start something. Do anything. Do it now. Do you have a sink, an under sink, vermicomposting bin with worms? Yeah. Start with something. The hardest thing to start is always the first thing. And once you do the first thing, you can go. 5. Good enough is perfect. Good enough is perfect. Think about function over form. It doesn't have to be pretty. All it has to be is functional. I mean, I'm so thankful that when we started and I came back to the farm full-time September 24, 1982 and quit that outside job, and Teresa and I both quit our off-farm jobs and went back to the farm and we started with practically nothing. How did we get lumber? We didn't have any money. So we tore down neighbors' barns. Neighbors that wanted their barns torn down that were, collapsing. I mean, we got their permission. We didn't just, yeah. At 1 a.m., we showed up. I thought there was a barn there. But agriculture has become so unprofitable in so many areas that a lot of farm infrastructure is on its heels. And so we have a lot of kind of dilapidated barns in our areas where, the western edge or the wind hits is dilapidated, but there's a lot of good lumber in the east end of it. And people want these torn down. We'd tear them down. I'd saw them up, and that's how we made our first chicken shelters and built our first, equipment sheds and stuff was recycled old barn lumber. Okay? It doesn't look pretty, but they're still standing. And it was cheap. We just had to go and knock out nails. And finally, number 6 on this knowledge is, if it's worth doing, it's worth doing poorly. See, we all sit here under this, we've got some matriarch or patriarch talking in our, ears about if it's worth doing, it's worth doing right. That's wrong. If it's worth doing, it's worth doing poorly first. Who does it right the first time? Think about Thanksgiving, okay? And you're there with, the whole family and crazy Uncle John and everybody else. And the newest family addition is little Mary Jane, and she's, 8 months old, crawling around on the floor. And all of a sudden, Mary Jane comes over here, and she pulls herself up on a chair. And she gets herself up here, she kind of totters. And probably her mother sees her first, right? And her mother says, "Oh, look, Mary Jane's, standing, walking. It's the first time she's done that, Mary Jane." And then all of a sudden, all the adults, they look at Mary Jane. She's sitting here, and suddenly everybody's looking at her, and she goes from terrified to, I'm the center of attention, and she loses her focus, plop, down on her diaper she goes. Now, what does everybody do? Everybody gets around her quick and says, "Well, Mary Jane, if you can't walk any better than that, just quit." That's not what we say, is it? We say, "Oh, look, you can try again. Here, crawl up my arm, use my leg, whatever, See, but something happens when we become adults and we have this idea that, that we can't do it poorly first. So we've got tons of homemakers that are petrified of cooking from scratch because they feel like they've got to make a whole meal from scratch the first time. No, just crack an egg and scramble it. That's good enough. Okay? It's like, well, I'm afraid to can. I mean, isn't that like a bomb? What if it explodes? There's all these things, So we need to be liberated from the idea that if it's worth doing right. Nothing is skillful at first. And the earlier you start, the earlier you can get in your 10,000 hours. that we now know is critical for being skilled. Okay. Number 2, the next fear. So the first fear, knowledge, information. Okay. Next fear, where do I get land? Right? I don't have land. I don't have enough money to get it. Where can I get land? I want to tell you and encourage you right now that to farm, you don't need to own land. One of the biggest inhibitors and fear factors in farming is this notion that you have to own the land you farm. So on our place, we've developed what we call a portable farm, where all the infrastructure is portable. Now think about it. If all the infrastructure is portable, all the shelters and the control mechanisms like electric fencing, and the tools, okay, and of course the equipment's portable. But if everything's portable, suddenly you can be anywhere. All it takes is land access. You don't have to own it. All you've got to do is have access to it. I was up in Edmonton earlier this spring and met a lady that lived in the middle of Edmonton. She wanted a farm, didn't have any land, but she had a friend that had a neighbor who had a large yard. She went to this lady and said, "You've got this large yard. Would it be okay if I put a vegetable garden there?" "Yeah, that'd be okay." So you put a vegetable garden in there. Well, the neighbor saw the pretty vegetable garden and went to her and said, "Would you put one on my place?" So she put one there. Next thing she do, now she's up to 15 gardens with 3 full-time employees, full-time farming in the middle of Edmonton, and the name of the business, On Borrowed Ground. You know, it's amazing. Every time I think I've heard the most difficult circumstance, then I read about somebody like this or meet somebody like this. It's amazing. I mean, a lady with a condominium, she went to her landlord. She said, "Could I have a 10-foot by 10-foot square here to put some vegetables in?" The landlord said, "Oh, yeah, that'd be fine." She put it in. He was so taken by it. He said, "Well, do some more." Next thing, he canceled his landscape contract. She's now farming the whole condo lawn, and all of his friends are coming to say, "Would you take over our condo lawns?" Full-time farming condo lawns, okay? So every time you hear about a difficult situation, Michael Abelman in Vancouver, you know, he's full-time farming on asphalt parking lots in the middle of the armpit of the city by the stadiums. He just got a bunch of these wooden crates that we get all these parts from India and China in, you know. And of course, you know, the U.S. doesn't make anything anymore, and so these things are accumulating here. And so he takes these wooden boxes and gets spent mushroom, you know, a mushroom growing medium, puts it in with drip irrigation. He's got multi-acre farms in boxes with drip irrigation in stadium asphalt parking lots. Okay? You don't need to own land when you have portable infrastructure and the whole farm can be put on a flatbed trailer and moved around or hooked behind a pickup truck and go. Now you can farm nooks and crannies. I call this nook and cranny farming. I mean, you know, if the state would let you could. How many farms could we have in the medians of interstates and in the clover leaves of expressways? You go to Italy, they don't have big bat wing mowers, you know, mowing these places. They've got them divvied up in little quarter-acre lots. They've got vegetable gardens with a tool shack and a hammock sitting there. People come out from town, tend their garden on the weekends, and then take all their food back in. People eat on it. Can you imagine doing that here? What? Liability? What if a car veers off and kills somebody? Well, you know, as if there's no cost to not growing anything. So portable farm. And secondly, we want farms that put their equity in management, not in infrastructure. The average American farm, it takes $4 worth of depreciable infrastructure, land and buildings, $4 worth of depreciable infrastructure to turn $1 in annual gross sales. Our ratio is 50 cents to $1. That's an 800% difference. What that means is that the capitalization cost to entry is much lower. You see, the reason the American farmer now averages 60 years old is because when you have a situation where young people can't get in, the old people can't get out. So the desperate need of our day is to create portable farms where the young people don't have to buy the land and can piggyback enterprises on existing land bases that are either underutilized or locked up in some sort of a preservation thing, and putting their equity not in infrastructure but in management. This is why, for example, controlled grazing with pastured livestock is so magnificent. Because instead of having your equity in a confinement animal feeding operation and spending your life trying to finagle a mortgage and pour concrete and bend rebar and build a massive structure, the equity is in your ability to create a choreography across this pastured landscape. See? And that can be done with electric fencing, all of which for a farm can be put in a wheelbarrow. Okay? It fundamentally changes. Our equity can be in our customers. You know, when farms just sell into the commodity business, the margins are so low, the equity has to go into enough infrastructure to drive a production model at very small margins and try to stay one head of the things that rot, rust, and depreciate. But if our equity, I always say, the polyface, our most important asset of the farm is this box of customers. That's their most important asset. And you know what? Your customers will follow you. They don't care where your farm is. I mean, as long as you don't move across the country. But as long as you stay kind of in the area, you can be on this place, that place, this little nook and cranny. You can squat over here behind the National Forest. I mean, you can do whatever. Okay? Think about the equity and management of timing and technique in planning. I mean, if you can figure out, for example, how to maintain soil fertility without petroleum, that's a tremendous unfair advantage. Okay? And there's nothing unfair about the unfair advantage. That's just a business term to explain. If you can figure out in any economic sector how to carve out an unfair advantage, you suddenly have an unfair advantage, all right, to be able to stay in that business. Back when energy costs really spiked there 3 years ago, I read that the average farm in America, 50% of their expense is fuel. 50% of the average farm's expense is fuel. So we decided we'd do an energy audit on our place. And we found out that ours is 5%. And realized that diesel fuel could go to $10 a gallon and we'd still be fine. Now, it doesn't mean we don't use diesel. It doesn't mean that I'm here praying for $10 a gallon diesel fuel. What it does mean is that if it spikes again and goes to $10, at least we'll be the last guy standing. And there's a comfort in being the last guy standing. There's a resiliency there. Of course, you always hope if you're the last guy standing, before you get to the last guy standing, somebody will be clever enough to figure out an answer. So invest, think about the investment in information. This is a good place to put a plug in for, what's going on right here. All of you that have come and invested in this fair are investing in information that a lot of people aren't able to access or don't know about, don't get, all right? The best investment you'll ever make is in information. You don't have to borrow money for information. You don't have to borrow money for management. You don't have to borrow money to maintain a web page of customers. Are you with me? suddenly that completely changes the equity of the farm. But when all your equity is tied up in land and buildings, then you take all this precious capital and you burden yourself, okay, with an inability to move. So I encourage people to rent. You know, farmland rental rates are all based on the axiom that everybody knows there ain't no money in farming. So rent is cheap. You know, we now rent about 1,500 acres. We're renting some, $15 to $20 million worth of land for $30,000 a year. I mean, you couldn't borrow that kind of money to buy that land, to get that rent to add up to the value of that land, it'd take 200 years. You can caretake. There are places all over with elderly people desperate to stay in their house and looking for a couple or a person to come and live in with them or live in a guest cottage to just kind of mow the lawn and take care of things. There are ads all over the place. And with the aging baby boom population, this is going to escalate as people don't want to stay at home and don't want to go to a nursing home or a retirement center, want to stay where they are. A lot of times they have a big acreage or a farmette or a residential estate or even a 300-acre farm. I mean, I've gotten letters from people that ask me to find them a young person to inherit the farm to. They say, I'm 80 years old, I love this place, I'm second generation here, and my 3 kids, as soon as I die, they're just going to turn it into cash. So I don't want to leave it to them, I want to leave it to somebody that will love this land so much as I do. Can you find me a young person to inherit it to? Here's the problem. Here's the problem. To get to that point, you need a track record. Okay? And that's why you got to start something today. Even if it's a fruit tree. Partner up with somebody, an existing farm. Yeah, the average farmer thinks that there's nothing else that can be done on their farm. I've filled this place up. You know why? Because I come in at night and I'm tired. And I can't do anymore. But the fact is that the concept of stacking and symbiosis and synergy with complex multi-speciated relationships can put a whole host of additional enterprises onto a land base. There's not a farm in the country that couldn't also raise honey. There's not an orchard in the country that couldn't also have chickens, pastured chickens underneath. There's not a beef cattle farm in the country that couldn't also have pastured chickens and turkeys and eggs. There's not a forestry operation that couldn't also grow mushrooms. Or, I read about a guy in New England that has a 16-acre forest and makes $100,000 a year off a 16-acre forest. Why? Because he's a woodworker and he takes every single piece of wood and value adds it to its highest thing. He takes little pieces of cherry, little saplings, just crud stuff he's going to cut out. If he's got a 24-inch piece, he saves it, dries it, turns it on his mill, sells it for $100 as a special cherry rolling pin for rolling dough, not to hit your husband with, but The reason that these 60-year-old farmers can't imagine doing anymore is because they're tired. And so there's a lot of partnerships that can develop with symbiotic, holonic farming. And then, you can squat on a place. Just squat, all right? Number 3. Boy, I'm going to have to hurry. I didn't dry run this before I came. I just made my notes. Number 3, the next fear, finances. We're going to run out of money. I mean, look at our budget. We have clothes, food, taxes, car, mortgage payment. What happens when I don't have a paycheck? Can we get this enterprise, can we get this thing up going fast enough to replace the off-farm income? This is a very real problem, isn't it? Sure. Solutions. Number 1, be debt-free. I know it's easy to say, How do you get debt-free? You live cheaply. You live cheaply. How do you do that? Well, you cut your living expenses. Grow your own food. Drop your utility bills. Wear junk clothes. Stay home, except for Mother Earth News Fairs. Buy used and wait for deals. Get the mortgage paid off. You don't have to go to the soccer Little League games. You don't have to go to the Nutcracker Suite. You don't have to go to processed food. When people always accuse us of having, an elitist food mentality because nobody can afford your food, I always say, here, take me to your house. Take me to your house. If you think our food's too expensive, take me to your house, and there's not enough money to buy our food, okay, take me to your house, and here's what we're not going to see. We're not going to see lottery tickets, golf clubs, Netflix, widescreen TVs, iPods, potato chips, takeout. Did I say lottery tickets? I could say it again. It's a good one. How about $100 designer jeans with holes already in the knees? Got to be careful about a university. I asked this at a university. I said, so let's talk about all the things that people out there, that people buy that they don't need, okay? And a guy yelled out, underwear! No. Got to be careful about colleges, all right? But the fact is, folks, if we really look at our situations, there are places that we can cut. And Teresa and I remember very well, we lived on $300 a month. For the first 2 years of our marriage, we drove a $50 car. In fact, we were married more than 10 years before we spent an accumulated total of $2,500 on automobiles. Okay? In fact, the first car we bought was $50. 2 years later, it threw a rod in the engine, and I sold it for parts for $75. We only ate what we grew. She canned and froze and dehydrated, and we had our own grapevines. We squeezed our own juice, and when she sent me shopping, she gave me a list. I went down to the basement, brought up the green beans and squash and whatever. I always said if we could have figured out how to grow toilet paper and Kleenex we could have pulled the plug on society. We cut our own firewood. We lived on about $3,000 a year. Now I realize that's, 25 years ago, 30 years ago. But it'd still be only equivalent to about 8 today. The fact is that if you don't have a mortgage and you don't have expensive tastes, you can live pretty cheaply. Number 2, create a nest egg for 1 year. Get a nest egg together that when you make that break, you can live on it for 1 year. That's what we did. That takes the pressure off. What's the worst thing that can happen? The worst thing that can happen is in a year, you have to go back and do some, work again to develop a little more. That was exactly the way we came to it. What we found was, number 3, we were able to fill in with enough piecework. I built some fence, helped the guy plant trees. We have an apprentice that's now full-time farming, and his piece is he has a portable bandsaw mill, and he's financing his farm startup doing custom lumber milling with a portable bandsaw mill in the community. All right, so maybe your piecework is something else. Maybe you like to train oxen, and you could train a pair of oxen to do birthday parties in the area. Or maybe you know how to do balloon art, and you can do birthday parties, entertaining with balloons. Look, nothing is undignified. Nothing's out of the question. If this is really a heart passion, you do it. Thank you. You just do it. You don't sit around here, I'm a victim, I can't. If you have to stay up all night, you stay up all night. But what we found was that by not going to town, not going to the job, we were able to cut our expenses by 50% because we went from filling up the car once a week to filling it up once every 6 weeks. And guess what? Instead of madly trying to pull all the weeds and the green beans and squash on Saturday, we were there when they were so small, we could take a little stirrup hoe and keep them under control. Are you with me? There was a tremendous amount of capitalized non-slippage. We were there for every calf that was born, every fox that attacked the chickens, every rainstorm that would have otherwise wiped out something. Okay? We were there. And so the losses were minimal. So don't underestimate the power of eliminating slippage when you come home. And number 4, cash flow. You got to think about cash flow. Most businesses fail not because they're not successful businesses, but because the cash flow doesn't keep up with the investment that's necessary on the front end. It doesn't come in the back door as fast as going out the front door. There's a slinky effect, right? And you're investing. Okay, so a couple things here. One is to always think about quick turnaround items. And I'm convinced that one of the reasons that we were successful early on was because we got into this pasture chicken thing, which has an 8-week turnaround time. I mean, that's as fast as a radish. You buy the chick, 8 weeks later, you have your money back plus a bunch of profit. Okay? It's a really fast cash turnaround. What are things that you're interested in doing and growing that give you a really fast cash turnaround? Where as opposed to say a calf, you buy a heifer and you breed her, and then she has a calf, and then you wait 2 years before you got a 3 or 4 year lag time. You with me? Okay. Fruit trees. A really successful farm we were in Australia. Their real dream was an orchard farm. The problem is it's a long lag time. So what did they do? They ran portable pig shelters and portable chicken shelters through the little fledgling trees and generated cash flow while the trees were growing. Okay, that's why the old timers butter and egg money. Butter and egg money. That's cash flow. It comes all the time. So think about cash flow that comes all the time. Quick turnaround items, and then multi-season complementarity. When you're making your portfolio of items that you want to grow and do, make sure that they don't compete for the same time of year. If what you're growing or doing has a peak labor load in May, don't do something else that has a peak labor load in May. Think about, what can I do in the fall? And that's why things like maple syruping and woodworking and firewood cutting and making bending bentwood rockers and whatever in the wintertime are so complementary to a seasonal pasture-based livestock operation. That's just an example. But think about how you can extend your season. If you're producing vegetables, do a root cellar immediately, okay, so that you've got cash flow through the winter. We want to elongate our seasons, extend seasons, and have season complementarity in the enterprises that we do. Number 4, the 4th fear. Labor. Who's going to do all the work? What if we want to go away? We like to go to Bermuda every year, for 2 weeks. I can't afford to hire employees. How can I get it all done? Solutions. Number 1, love people. Now I know that's not a normal farm characteristic. Because most farmers are farmers so they don't like people. Have a much better relationship with their John Deere than their spouse. But the fact is, you can't do it all yourself. I haven't met any business yet in which all the gifts and talents necessary to run a successful enterprise grow on one pair of legs. And when I did my blog, a teaser for this presentation back, I started with, in the news. One of the thing that I started with was my reality that I've never been alone. Okay? I mean, we started there with Mom and Dad, and then, Mom and Dad were still there when Teresa and I started, and so I've never been alone. Fortunately, Dad could balance a checkbook. I can't balance a checkbook. Now, I love to keep, production records and how many eggs and how many calves and breeding records and how many cow days per acre. I love those kind of records. I got all those kind of things. That's fun. But boy, you put the check register in front of me, man, it just looks like Chinese. Okay? Fortunately, Dad was an accountant, and then he taught my wife, Teresa, how to do it, and she's meticulous to a fault. I mean, she'll spend 8 hours looking for a penny. But the person watching your money, that's what you want. You want an anal person looking for your pennies. So you gotta broaden your mind and think about embracing people. Don't think it's gonna be me and Matilda and nobody else. We're gonna go be, hermit curmudgeons. Because that's the surest way to limit your potential. Okay? Number 2, as you begin assembling a team, incentivize the team. And that includes your children. How do you do that? You create fiefdoms. Everybody wants to have their own fiefdom, right? Everybody wants their fiefdom. So you don't just turn your kids into slave labor. You create fiefdoms of responsibility and authority for them to operate on a commission basis. And you encourage them to have their own businesses. And they're their own businesses. They're not your business, they're their own business. And as they, grow up, they start getting commissions. Performance-based remuneration. We have 20 people on our team, and not a single one gets hourly wages. I hate hourly wages. Nobody should get paid for showing up. And the problem with hourly wages is that there's always a big tension between management and labor about expectations and performance, right? How do you know somebody's really giving an honest day's work? I'm a big believer in subcontractors, commissions, and piecework, piece-based incentives. So create a way to do that. Build that kind of collaborative synergy into your partnerships. For example, we had an intern, Leanna. She wanted to stay at the farm. So we said, well, Leanna, what do you want to do? She said, I'd like to do a garden. We've never, we've been in livestock. We've always had a personal garden, but we never had enough garden to sell. She said, I'd like to do a garden. I said, okay. So she's now completely in charge of all the polyface horticulture, all of our gardens. Her rent is, she grows a certain number of articulated pounds for Sherry, our daughter-in-law, and Teresa, for us, for our personal, canning and storage and root cellaring and use. And then everything else, it's her baby. She sets her price, she decides who to sell it to, and she takes shared risk, but it's her baby. And so now we're selling vegetables, and I don't even have to think about it. See? Suddenly now I'm freed up from creating jobs, and the jobs we have are created by the young people who want to join the team and say, I'd like to do this. So my job is not to provide jobs and not say, I want to do this, I got to find a person to do that, but I can let that farm morph and move wherever it wants to based on the fiefdoms that come to us. That's a totally different business model, isn't it? But it's incredibly liberating for me. And if somebody wants to do duck eggs this year and then doesn't want to do it in 2 years, I'm not scrambling around saying, oh my goodness, we've got duck egg customers, I got to find somebody to do duck eggs. We just say, we won't do duck eggs anymore. That's okay. And then In 2 years, somebody comes and says, I want to do duck eggs. We got duck eggs again. Are you with me? You know, that takes all that pressure off. Suddenly, you've incentivized what your labor. Create community. So what we've got are all these subcontractors, and I had several others. I'm going to run out of time. But essentially, this allows us to have enough people and a team that can cover with each other. So individuals can lead, we can cover for each other, we can share equipment, and essentially we're creating community to leverage the individual gifts and talents through the fiefdoms. Number five, the fear. The fear is marketing. People are afraid to market. I can't sell. There aren't enough people interested here in good food or in artisanal products. I can't sell anything. A lot of this is the fear of rejection. We farmers, we're so close personally and emotionally to what we're producing. We fear rejection. When somebody says, no, I don't want your onions. Oh, I picked these, I weeded them, I planted them, I watered them, I babysat them, I incubated them, I prayed over them. And you don't want my onions. You hate me. And a lot of us are afraid of selling because we say it makes us look mercenary. We don't want the hard sell, we think about the used car salesman or the insurance salesman or whatever, and we don't want to be hawked to, and we're afraid of selling because that'll make us, right, look mercenary, like, self-serving farmer selling his green beans, arrogant, right? These are fears, okay? Solution. Number one, diversify the portfolio. It's easier to find 100 people to spend $1,000 with you than 1,000 people to spend $100 with you. The hard part in marketing is finding the customer. Once you've got a customer, whatever your venue is, whether it's a web page, a farmer's market stall, a roadside stand, an on-farm venue, whatever it is, once you've got a customer, they want to, if they're there to get beef, they want chicken. If they're there to beef and chicken, they want eggs. If they're there for beef, chicken, and eggs, they'd love to have, grapevine wreaths and jelly and jam and baked bread and cheese and potted plants, cut flowers. So you can diversify your portfolio by either adding other items, like adding honey to meat or whatever. And that's real cheap to do. We have a neighbor that does a wonderful apple juice. In fact, A.P. Thompson, Golden Acres Orchard, was featured in a Plowboy interview in about 1974. And we read it and started getting their apple juice. He's now passed away, and his son runs the orchard. AP was an entrepreneur, storyteller, gregarious, schmoozer, marketer, okay? No problem. His son John is arguably a better orchardist, but not a marketer. Weather's bad. Can't get no help. And so we saw the orchard kind of starting down. We said, John, would you mind us adding your apple juice to our product queue? Oh, I'd love it. And this apple juice, folks, it's cold pressed. It's pure cold pressed apple juice with an inch of sediment on the bottom of the jug. In January, you got to pace yourself. You can suddenly chug a lug 2 glasses of that, and then suddenly, oops, I just ate 6 apples and spent 24 hours working through. So you have to kind of pace yourself. So we just added the apple juice to our queue, and suddenly now we're selling, $80,000 worth of his apple juice. Boom! All it took was a line on the shopping cart, see? Or you can diversify your portfolio by value added, like adding parts and pieces to your chicken. By value adding something else. If you're growing corn, make cornmeal. If you're making cornmeal, make muffins. If you're making muffins, lettuce. Add bake butter. But you can value add within an item, and you can value add by adding other items. But diversify your portfolio. Number 2 is to create commission-based partners. Some people love to sell. Marketers are marketers, and most of them would love to have something to market that they can really believe in. Give them that opportunity. Put them on a commission. So what if they get, we have 2 marketers, two ladies, and they're both on a commission, and you know what? I don't care if they make $500,000 a year. That's fine with me. Number 3, electronic aggregation. Marketing, I think that on the cutting edge of where we are, we need to be really careful about getting sucked in to bricks and mortar and cash register retail interfaces. I don't know if y'all know about it or not, but there's this thing called eBay and Amazon.com and Craigslist and all sorts of things. I don't know about any of these. I don't even know how to get on it. No, I know how to get on internet, but it's pretty difficult. Anyway, the point I'm making is that what we desperately are seeing come about now are all these electronic aggregators, electronic interfaces, electronic shopping carts. There are 6 software manufacturers of virtual farmers markets now who are using the power of the internet with no cost, real-time communication to do shopping online and localized. And I love it when our side co-ops a global marketing technology as the easy way in for localization. I feel like we've just created subterfuge or revolution or rebellion or whatever. Love it. Okay, so people can shop on their own time, not yours. It can be portable because farmers markets and CSAs have their own inefficiencies. Doesn't mean that I don't like them. I just think we need to be looking at some of these electronic aggregation systems. Number 6, and I've got to hustle, I've got 5 minutes. Number 6, the next fear is the fear of business. I thought business was evil. I thought business was bad. What if I make a profit? I'll become an evil, profitable businessman. What if I have to buy insurance? Accounting? Administration? How do I know that I've maintained margins? Keeping the bills paid? All this business stuff. Solution. Number 1. Bookkeepers and accountants are all over the place. Hire one. They love this stuff. Believe me, you can hire a part-time bookkeeper or an accountant for, when you're real small, a couple $1,000s a year. Think of how much you can get done in the amount of time you're struggling over that kind of stuff. And I mention this off the top because most of us, if you're like me, you really don't like to do desk work and sit here doing all the accounting and keeping the invoice, right? So hire somebody to do it. It'll free you up to enjoy your talents. Number 2, categorize everything. Know your enterprise margins. If you're running pigs and poultry, don't just have a feed category, have chicken feed and pig feed. And if you're running broilers and egg layers, separate it out into broiler feed and layer feed. Are you with me? Because if you don't categorize, we have over 200 categories. Why? So we can run margins on every single enterprise and subtract our overheads from our direct costs and our margins, and we can figure our margins. That's how we know whether this enterprise is subsidizing that one and that one's carrying its weight. That's how you know which ones to expand and which ones to get rid of. Do time and motion studies. You know how long it takes to plant a row of green beans, to plant 4 hills of squash, to put away 30 dozen eggs, to move a chicken shelter. We've actually timed all of these things down and have these very sophisticated benchmarks. And we want our interns to carry watches and time themselves and compete against the benchmarks. This isn't evil. It's just efficiency. Okay? That's just thinking like a business. Stay in your unfair advantage. What do you do well that nobody else does? Don't go jumping out into something that somebody else does better than you. Stay with where you are with your unfair advantage. Stay focused on your unfair advantage. 5, insurance. Shop around. And by the way, if you're afraid of being sued, don't direct market. That's what the commodity business is for. The fact is, the more insurance you buy, the more chance you have of being sued. And when you do find an insurance agent, don't tell him anything. Because we don't fit any boxes. You can separate your business from your personal life with an LLC and that sort of thing. You know all those kinds of things. But just all this business is important to either figure it out yourself or find somebody to help you. Remember that profit is the lifeblood of sustainability. Profit will keep you, it's not the only thing, but it is important to stay in business, and it attracts young people to it. It is the ultimate succession plan. A profitable business is something that young people will want to come into. We can talk all day about what we want to do and how to heal the earth and all that. Ultimately, if we don't have farm models and food production models that the young people are attracted to, we don't have a regenerative system. And finally, the last fear is the fear of being optimistic. I thought everything was going to the pits. Pessimism is fun. We love pessimism. I mean, that's why we call them stoplights and not go lights. We love to dwell on what stops us, right? Pessimism's great. What if I become optimistic? I'm not supposed to be optimistic. Scarcity is everywhere. We're about to run down. I mean, sickness, we're all going to die. We're going to get, asthma and allergies and autism and, it's all going south. The collapse is on the horizon. I can't afford to think helpful or big or optimistic. Solution. Number 1, vision drives everything. Concentrate on what you'd like your community to be like, and then make it happen. What's wrong with concentrating on what you'd like your community to be like, and then facilitating that? Make that your vision. Here's a good question for you. Think about this after you go home. Answer this. If time or money were not an issue at all, what would I do tomorrow? If time or money were not an issue at all, what would I do tomorrow? Now go do it. Okay? That's vision. That's vision. All right? Number 2, people love big missions and sacred causes. They're magnetic. They draw people. You're not just a farmer. You're an ecology masseuse. Okay? We're not just producing food, we're producing life-giving nutrition. See? People love big causes, big missions, sacred movements. Define that as part of your business. That is what's noble enough to attract our best and brightest. Broaden your borders, read eclectically, expose yourself to healers, economic healers, emotional healers, ecology healers. Read broadly and eclectic to broaden your mission and your borders. And finally, the cure for the fear of optimism is faith that will always eventually trump fear. Faith in the Creator's design template, faith in the integrity and righteousness of food, and faith in the ultimate abundance of the earth as an object lesson of mercy and grace. And I suggest that as we move to a faith-based farming system, we will draw people. We will draw our children, our families, our neighbors, our friends, and we will cure that fear of being optimistic. and we will have a contagion of faith and optimism and vision. And that will create healing for our culture. God help us to do it. Now may all of your carrots grow long and straight. May your radishes be large and not pithy. May the coyotes be struck blind at your pasture chickens. May all of your culinary experiments be delectably palatable. May the rain fall gently on your fields, the wind be always at your back, your children rise up and call you blessed, and may we all make the world a better place than we found. Thank you so much. Blessings on you. Thank you. Thank you very much.